Welcome to the Geometric View, episode 50, season 5. Today we're going to get into the electricity of life. Electricity, is it alive? The geometry of electricity and life. Everything having to do with DNA to the helical filaments. It's all living. What is it made of? Is there actually nutrients in the sound of thunder? Is there information in lightning? I'm Buddy James, your host. Let's get into it. Let's get into the circuit. The best way to support us is on PayPal. goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Now I started recording. All right, welcome to the Geometric View. This is episode 50, season 5. And we are going to do electricity. Is it alive? I'm your host, Buddy James, and I think I already started sharing my screen, so we did things a little bit different today. So we're going to hop right into the presentation, the geometry of electricity and life. Today is 3/2/1/2021, which could have some meaning to Skull and Bones' Geronimo's skull. Geronimo, 3/2/1, Geronimo. You know, you've heard that possibly growing up. But this concept is tomorrow is 3/2/2, and that's also Skull and Bones' secret number. So that could have some play there, some interplay. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick, and then I'm going to start resharing my screen just to make sure that I'm recording and that everybody can see here. And then we're going to hop right into the presentation. So thank you everybody for being here. And we just had the equinox, and it was really good to have 24 hours of sleep. I fell asleep and slept for all day and all night. So I'm all good. I just needed extra sleep. So electricity, is it alive? Fractals, filaments, and frequencies. The geometries of electricity and life. Of course, there's going to be more things that I couldn't add into this episode, but each one there's stuff that so much information that you know there's always room for more. So, where does life begin? Does life begin in the filament? Does life begin inside the mind of a rapist because he wants to have a baby and therefore he concedes with the notion and goes for it? Does life begin in the mind, which is electrical and mental, and does it continue with acting upon things or thoughts? Does life begin inside of the rolling sounds of thunder and raging rivers? What is it about the geometry of birkeland currents, fractal recursions, mirroring and mimicking the same properties of phylotactic spirals of trees and plant growth that is so fascinating about life? How is each individual cell's communicative geometry integrating with all other cells and its environment? Has a lot to do with surface tension and the outside of the cell, and surface tension in general with water and organized water. I wanted to put this in the episode, but it's called easy water, exclusion zone water, or structured water. And it is a patterning of water that happens when you freeze water, or when water goes through phase transitions from cold to hot to cold, from water to steam, and steam or ice to water, and vice versa. This stacking of hexagonal layers begins and creates charge and charge separation, which creates the layers. And the only thing different with structured water than other water that they measured is the surface tension. So surface tension has a lot to do with everything, and how us as humans have skin, and we can feel and get the chills and have our gut instincts, how everything is connected through the outside and inside of things. Can it be argued that electricity is actually alive and not just an essential part of life? So is geometry alive? Is it live, or is electricity alive? What would be your definition of alive? That would encompass electricity, and what do you exactly mean by electricity? So we got to define exactly what we mean by electricity here. Electrostatic charge, electric field, electric current, electromagnetic waves. There's so many different aspects and attributes of electricity. And as it coaxial filaments outward from the internal of suns and sources of energy into the external world of the things that we see and experience as collective consciousness, and further frayed ropes off of the existence of life. So we're going to go through and identify some of what current and electricity is and the differences between voltage, current, and resistance here. Voltage is the push. It's what gets electricity moving. Imagine a tube with water in it. High voltage source would be like a big water tower to give it lots of pressure. Current is how much electricity is flowing. For water, it's like measuring how much water goes past. Resistance is what slows down the electricity. High resistance is like a narrow pipe. Low resistance is like a wide pipe. Low resistance, high resistance. All three of these are related. If you have a fixed voltage, then the current is based on how much resistance there is. To use the water analogy, you have a certain size of water tower. If you attach a big pipe to it, more water will flow. Power is voltage times current. Power is how much work you can do with this. For water, if you have a big push and lots of water moving, then you can move a lot with it. Ohm's law is definitely one of the most important mathematical relationships between voltage, current, and resistance. Ohm's law defines the relationship between the voltage across the load, resistance, and the current flowing through it. This post will discuss what is Ohm's law, understanding it through a simple circuit, units of measurement, Ohm's law, triangle, and when it is not applicable. So this is Maxwell's diagram from the Philosophical Magazine 1861, showing the rotating vortices represented by hexagons and the idle wheels between them. Also, another example of charge and charge separation inside of structured water. It does the same similar thing. So it's the vortices that flow in clockwise and counterclockwise rotations as charge and charge separation happen, that really we, as our metabolism burns up the water inside of our bodies through mental tasks, which take up way more calories and burn water. These structured events inside of the structured water inside of our heads is most likely the geometry of consciousness and how consciousness flows. The basic geometry of the individual slices of reality, really, here. So discovering electromagnetism. We'll have to explain some of this to begin with here. Michael Faraday made his first breakthrough in magnetism in 1821. When placing a small magnet around a current-carrying wire, he proved that the force exerted by the current on the magnet was circular. This discovery was a cornerstone for the progress of science, being used today, for example, to generate electricity on a large scale in power stations. James Clerk Maxwell takes the research further and develops the electromagnetic theory of light, proving that light, electricity, and magnetism are profoundly connected by forces that he believed to be propagated in the medium called ether. The vortex spin inside of ether, moreover, here. Remarkably, his proposed mechanical model for the ether could account for all known phenomena of electromagnetism, which we still use today. From electromagnetism to geometry, the forces of electromagnetism and electricity, magnetic attraction, and laser light are all hints to a hidden geometric field, the underlay of all other fields, spaces, and their behaviors. Is electricity alive? In each of these situations, it is as if electricity is alive and on a quantum level that occurs too fast for us to observe or understand. It is correcting the problems that are leading to various kinds of dysfunction or damage. Long before I read about the spinal cord experiments, this is from an excerpt that I picked up when you go to Quora and ask, is electricity alive? This is one of the answers from someone here. One of the top 4 or 5, or maybe even the first. So I just copied it. I was supposed to put his name down here, but I forgot. So anyway, that's what it is. This is the answer here in Quora with the most likes or understanding. Okay, so I was telling a friend of mine that medical science should try to treat spinal cord injuries by bridging the severed ends together and as quickly as possible introducing the proper amount of electricity to the severed ends before the lower portion is so damaged it will no longer conduct electricity. My hypothesis was that if you do this, the electricity would actually figure out, yes, I literally mean intentionally figure out how to heal the damaged areas and bring them back together with the creation of new tissue. Of course, I do not think electricity working on this quantum level can do miracles, but if it is possible for the tissue to be healed on a quantum level, a level at which doctors cannot work, electricity might well do what is needed with just a little help from us, just as it appears to do with cloning and these other uses of electricity in medicine and elsewhere. One other interesting point that I would make on electricity in life, since I'm this far out on a limb, why not go a little further? Think about the physical action of sex leading to an orgasm. Does not the pumping action of sex with the rising excitement sort of mimic the use of manual generator to create a large charge of electricity released in an arc we subjectively call an orgasm that perhaps charges those sperm with sufficient life to do their work and find the egg? After all, the joy of an orgasm fires through the entire body, but in a male, it is centered in just the right area to charge sperm with life. Just an idea. Is electricity intentionally seeking life? This is an image here from Sean Pekarsik. Notably, computers use electricity and their efficiency is based in large part on the level of conductivity within them. Of course, the materials used, like biological material, does not allow electricity to make changes on a quantum level that would be needed to, say, create life from a computer's hardware. In other words, what if we figured out a way to produce a computer whose hardware was malleable at the quantum level the way our biology is? Would electricity figure out a way of creating life from a computer just as it creates life in the prepared clone cell? If my hypothesis is right, it would, because according to my hypothesis, electricity is intentionally seeking to create biological life or aid the functioning of biological life wherever possible on Earth or elsewhere. So that begs the question, is the electromagnetic spectrum evolving? And is it moving in the material sense, in the baryonic matter, to be promulgating the force of life? And I believe the answer is yes. So just for fun, let's take this a step further. What if it isn't real? What if it really isn't electricity that is doing this on its own? This possibility is why I hesitate to suggest electricity is alive. Per se, maybe electricity is opening a door to a different form of unknown quantum life, or quantum biology, or geometry. Life that is very different than our slow-witted biological life, allowing it to enter and do what's needed to be done on a biological scale, so long as the door remains open. Okay, So then we'll go into a flash of life inside of the cell, just as scientists captured the flash of light that sparks when a sperm meets an egg. Oh, sorry. Scientists just captured the flash of light. So this is from an old article, and there's so much more information on this since. But for the first time ever, scientists have captured images of the flash of light that sparks at the very moment a human sperm cell makes contact with an egg. The phenomenon has been observed in animals before, but no one ever seen the spark of human conception. And what's even more incredible is the fact that some eggs burn brighter than others, which is a direct indication of their ability to develop into a healthy embryo, a team from Northwestern University found. Researchers in the United States have captured the first images of the exact moment when a mammal's egg is fertilized to show that, in response, it releases billions of zinc atoms that create tiny zinc sparks at the point of conception. Geometric structure of zinc. On cue, at the time of fertilization, we see the egg releases thousands of packages, each dumping 1,000,000 zinc atoms, and then it's quiet. Then there is another burst of zinc release, said co-author Thomas Polarin in the release. Each egg has 4 or 5 of these periodic sparks. It is beautiful to see, orchestrated much like a symphony. We knew zinc was released by the egg in huge amounts, but we had no idea how the egg did this. Here's a zinc oxide and its atomic structure form, and here is a crystal of pure zinc. Zinc autocatalysis. So this is all from the same article here. Oops. All from the same article here from sciencealert.com. The team from Northwestern University invented a new fluorescent sensor that is able to track the movements of zinc in live cells. This allowed them to take an unprecedented view of an egg's zinc storage capacities and found some 8,000 zinc compartments, each one containing around 1,000,000 zinc atoms. They were able to watch as at the point of conception, these atoms were simultaneously released in a display that looks just like tiny fireworks and lasts about 2 hours after fertilization. Interesting. So the zinc spark. Here's the image captions courtesy of Northwestern University. The combined imaging approach was used to identify and characterize zinc-enriched packages in a mouse egg. These include live cell zinc label imaging from the top left here in the green, a state-of-the-art electron microscope in the top middle, and a high-energy X-ray imaging at the advanced photon source at the top right. With this combined data, researchers were able to determine that each zinc package contains 1,000,000 zinc atoms. The bottom images, release of thousands of these packages result in a striking event called zinc spark. That is a hallmark of fertilization in mammals. In the images shown, bright fluorescent signal coming from the egg as a result of the release of a group of zinc-rich packages from the egg to form the zinc spark. So it's a spark of life, going back to the orgasm, sparking, going back to the beginning of life, that evolutionist theories and many other different theorists and whether they're agnostic or not, theories or atheists, it all has to do with this life has a spark. So we're going to get into that spark. Is there information in lightning? Is there nutrients in thunder? Self-organization in electricity/lightning. Primordial soup experiments in an effort to provide life formed randomly from early Earth's primordial soup. Scientists have attempted to recreate those conditions, including zapping the soup with electricity to simulate lightning. The result is that amino acids, the building blocks of life, have appeared within the soup. Why, you ask? No one knows. They call this random, but not understanding why something happens is very different than the thing being random. So we're going to get into chains and how chains form and autocatalytic chain reactions. But this is polygonal crater formation by electric discharge. And this is how the geometry of lightning, you can go back to, I believe, episode 5 in the geometric view and see the geometry of lightning and what happens inside of charge. And there's information happening in this separation gaps that are created by repulsion between the tiny layers of charge as it moves. And the current filaments arranged in concentric polygonal layers, one moving one way and one moving the other, as charge rotates its way through a lightning bolt into the ground. You can see here, these are the different layers, the purple going this way, and charge, the release of charge and equal dispersion of charge is so that the whole amount of current doesn't hit at the same time. It releases the current sheath by sheath by sheath, as you can see here, counter-rotating gyration of these shapes, these vertical vortex, spinning helical type of energy that's fractal, and that's the filament, and this is frequency creating, and there's information that's feeding the mycelial networks and all of life, keeping the Schumann resonance in check. So electricity exists as fractals, filaments, and frequencies. All of life sprouts. How well something works depends on its shape. If you think of seeds, think of this. Perhaps all information is led by counter-rotation. It sure seems that way with projective geometry and progressive filaments as they sprout. One thing is for sure, Dan Winter points out, the golden ratio is the solution for geometric and arithmetic progression. This means that using this formula, Birkeland currents as they sprout should be the same. And indeed it is. Consciousness, perturbations in the concrescence of these pressures produces the umbilical filaments of life. Perhaps philosophy works in the same way, and psychology as well, as the youth of all creatures grow to the point of counter-rotation from parental guidance. Had there been no defiance from parental controls, there might not be no risk, no reward kind of concept. Electricity, filaments, and life. Birkeland currents and the Dougherty Network. This is all geometry that I've created based off of a vision and working for 18 years off of these different types of autocatalytic geometries that are alive. It's a dimensional. It's all moving, dynamic. So this is the map of long scale interscalar electrical wires that are filaments called Birkeland currents that connect one galaxy to another. This is what connects everything to everything else within helical strands. And this is a Bessel function that breaks down, this is magnetohydrodynamic geometry that breaks down into Bessel functions that repeat the same exact geometry from the center into hollow cores in the outside along central axis filaments. So this is the geometry of life and electricity and information in thunder. So this is an image here of a thermal image of the sound of thunder. Thunder or brontology. Thunder is the sound caused by lightning. Depending on the distance from and nature of the lightning, it can range from a sharp, loud crack to a low crumble, a brontide. The sudden increase in pressure and temperature from lightning produces rapid expansion of the air within and surrounding the path of a lightning strike. In turn, the expansion of air creates a sonic shock wave, often referred to as a thunderclap or peal of thunder. The study of thunder is known as brontology. Brontology is the scientific study of thunder. All thunder results from lightning. A bolt of lightning rapidly heats the air surrounding it, which causes the air to expand and generate into a sound wave we call thunder. I hope I don't keep repeating all this. I propose the sound of thunder has nutrients for all different creatures on the planet within the global electric circuit. In fact, predictive analytics of the Dougherty set backs up this claim with verifiable qualitative and quantitative geometric precision. And you can see the progressive filaments, projective geometry, and the progressive filaments here using the geometry to come into fruition from an inside and outside um, radiative and generative vortexes expanding and contracting, just as the lightning itself does as well to the air around it through compression and rarefaction. So highlighted below is a septagonal filament within the third gate coming off of the center. The opening and pinching of the specific vertices of each septagon is absolutely beautiful and could not be more perfect. This picture explains so much about life, and it's hard to even put into words. I don't even know where to begin. So all of this suggests nutrients of thunder and information in lightning. So that would bring us into abiogenesis. Chain reactions. DNA is a chain reaction, and the process of dendrites and axons is a chain reaction. Stars form on filaments like chains in chain reactions. It seems like life is a chain reaction, and everything, including our existence and cellular division, seems to be chain reactions, just like the yuga cycles of eons of ages. These are indeed all geometric chain reactions. Another word for chain reactions is autocatalytic. Perhaps a geometry that is set up, perhaps it is geometry that sets up the precursors for life and abiogenesis. Geometry of cycles, cells, and indras. Quaternions, octonions, Sidonians observed within magnetohydrodynamic filaments construction of a Birkeland current. This is the science of how life is formed out of helicons. In mathematics, the octonions are a normed division algebra over the real numbers, meaning it is a hypercomplex number system, which is the Dougherty set, and how it operates using octonions and so much more into the dimensions of consciousness and electricity and lightning and thunder and information. Octonions are not well known. Octonions have 8 dimensions. Okay. Yeah. Octonions have 8 dimensions, twice the number of dimensions of quaternions, of which they are an extension. They are not accumulative and not associative, but satisfy a weaker form of associativity, namely, they are alternative. They are also power associative. Octonions are not as well known as the quaternions and complex numbers, which are much more widely studied and used. Octonions are related to exceptional structures in mathematics, among them the exceptional Lie groups. Octonions have applications in fields such as string theory, special relativity, and quantum logic. Applying the Cayley-Dickson construction to the octonions produces the Sidonians. And that's what we have here. The Sidonians is the 16s inside here. So it goes, here's 1, just like a seed. I'll go into this here image and talk about it here in a minute, and talk about how seeds, on how the cells, individual cells, and cellular division happens using this. So in abstract algebra, the Sidonians form a 16-dimensional, non-accumulative, non-associative algebra over the reals. They are obtained by applying the Cayley-Dickson construction to the octonions, and as such are a subdivision of the Sidonians. Like the octonions, the Sidonians are not an alternative algebra. Applying the Cayley-Dickson construction to the Sidonians yields a 32-dimensional algebra, which is the center one here. And I'm taking this geometry of Sidonians and the 32-dimensional geometry here and breaking it down into filaments to show that life forming on these filaments through Birkeland currents is mirror image of life unfolding inside of cellular division. So sometimes called a 32 ions or trigintaduonions, it is possible to apply the Cayley-Dickson construction to the Sidonians infinitely many times. So the Cayley-Dickson construction is the doubling of just basically doubling 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, that kind of thing. Take this and compare it to the God of Gods of Indra teaching, and you get Indra, yuga cycles, millions of year-long yuga cycles within cycles, just as the image portrays below. Similar to pearls on a string and the expansive contractive cyclical universe model, the Dougherty set exposes the binary unfolding of cellular division simply out of sound, sonobiology. This model can be likened to the twin opposing spiral vortex model of Walter Russell's teaching, and as well as the pine cones kissing noses like Dan Winter talks about through phase conjugation and the opening and closing of the twisting and pinching of the phase conjugation. 100% all golden mean. I call it golden scaling. This is the golden slide, as everything is propelled by the gold within the gold tubes that leads to the 7 golden bowls. So anyway, if you look at how cells, through mitosis and meiosis, the cellular divisions of the centrosomes during the metaphase and anaphase here, you can also think of this as 24,000-year reversals in a galactic sheath, and this is the galactic sheath as it moves through the helical hydra, the hydra helix of life here. And this is like 24,000 years every time that there's a new yuga cycle and the poles reverse, and there's other epicycles within those, but this can be looked at as on a smaller scale as how cells divide, and this flipping or polar reversal is necessary. And you can also see the autocatalysis or autocatalytic behavior here happening, where it's all based off of big bang, big crunch, big bang, big crunch, pearls on a string type of Birkeland current filament reality, that this natural algorithm of first principle geometries tends to form. And like I said, it's qualitative and quantitative. So this is exactly the way that the harmony of the filaments fold, the way that musical notes node, the way that harmonies and subharmonies and sharps and B sharps and everything else relates and lies and holds itself inside of these harmonies of sounds. Geometry is prebiotic. Perhaps all things are geometric and have their formative causation from charge and charge separation. Initial conditions are geometric and set up the formative pathways for charge and electricity to form the rest of the thought and or the body. Electricity is geometric, and as each cell divides, a geometry is produced. This is the biology of baryonic matter. So this is a little bit of animism, and how can you experience electricity as being alive? This perspective comes from a pre-rational era where reality is understood as being essentially alive, that inanimate objects have an essential awareness that one can interact with. This perspective is also described as animist, but that long label is a rationalization that loses something vital. Instead, shamans of the old and shamans today will and modify, shift and modify consciousness where what was experienced as inanimate objects are now experienced as alive. The object comes alive, and one can even experience the sentience and consciousness of that object, talk with it, learn from it, persuade it, especially empaths. The more empathic you are, the more you are in tune to many different things in the universe, and love rocks and experience elation from mundane things or seemingly mundane things. And this leads us to a more primal experience, that of lightning and thunder, with the old sky gods and storm deities, and this sentience of lightning. Lots to explore there. So we're going to explain a tiny bit about a fractal here, a couple of things, just because everything I've been talking about is the fractal filament frequency type of nature of electricity and charge and lightning and the shape of it and what we can gather from it. So here, I'm just going to talk about it for a minute. A fractal often has the following features. It has a fine structure arbitrarily at arbitrarily small scales. It is too irregular to be easily described in traditional Euclidean geometric language. It is self-similar, at least approximately. It has a Horseldorf dimension, which is greater than its topological dimension, although this requirement is not met by space-filling curves such as the Hurlburt curve. It has a simple and recursive definition. Because they appear similar at all levels of magnification, fractals are often considered to be infinitely complex. In formal terms, natural objects that approximate fractals to a degree include clouds, mountain ranges, lightning bolts, coastlines, and snowflakes. However, not all self-similar objects are fractal. For example, a straight Euclidean line is formally self-similar, but fails to have other fractal characteristics. Now we're going to get into different uses of electricity. Electroconvulsive shock therapy, because throughout history we've used electricity for so many different things. We use it to kill people in jail. We use it to make people's through electroshock therapy. There's so many different things, so I'll just go on with this. Electroconvulsive shock therapy. I have no idea how, but someone decided that maybe sending us enormous amounts of electricity through the brain of a very depressed person might cause them not to be depressed. Apparently, it works. Not all of the time, of course, but enough to still be considered a valid treatment for severe depression. Why, you ask? No one knows. You know what also is a, a valid treatment for severe depression? Ketamine, because it resets the brain and helps you to remember what you have, what you should do, what direction you should go in, and how your different compartmentalized and compartmentalization of your life is connected. And there's so many other, like mushrooms are now and a big part of valid treatments for severe depression, and there's a bunch of stuff like ayahuasca. So these electrical resets are strange here. And a lot of the time it left people in a vegetative state when they went through electroconvulsive shock therapy. But microcurrents, burn victims, microcurrents of electricity have been used in burn victims to enhance healing of severely burned areas. Why does this work? No one knows. So we're going through electricity and how all of this stuff, there's so much we don't know about it. We don't even know what an electron is because we haven't seen one. We don't know what electrons are. We don't even know what electricity is. But we're going through this to try to understand how to get into the circuit and how to be more in tune. So, and a lot more than just that. So this is from an article from New Scientist, newscientist.com. Meet the electric life forms that live on pure energy. Unlike any life on Earth, These extraordinary bacteria use energy in its purest form. They eat and breathe electrons, and they are everywhere. Stick an electrode in the ground, pump electrons down it, and they will come. Living cells that eat electricity. They will come and be drawn to the electrode. We have known bacteria to survive on a variety of energy sources, but none as weird as this. Think of Frankenstein's monster brought to life by galvanic energy, except these electric bacteria are very real and are popping up all over the place. Unlike any other living thing on Earth, electric bacteria use energy in its purest form. Naked electricity in the shape of electrons harvested from rocks and metals. We already knew about two types, Schwannella and Geobacter. Now, biologists are showing that they can entice many more out of the rocks and marine mud by tempting them with a bit of electrical juice. Experiments growing bacteria on battery electrodes demonstrate that these novel mind-boggling forms of life are essentially eating and excreting electricity. That's cool. Enthusiasm is the electricity of life. How do you get it? You act enthusiastic until you make it a habit. Enthusiasm is natural. It is being alive, taking the initiative, seeing the importance of what you do, giving it dignity, and making what you do important to yourself and to others. It's a quote from Gordon Parks here, and I think, yeah, charge is your electricity, your direction, your purpose, your enthusiasm is electric. So we'll get into optimal flow states after hearing such a good quote from Gordon here. Flow and flow psychologies. In positive psychology, a flow state, also known colloquially as being in the zone, is the mental state in which a person performing some activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. In essence, flow is characterized by the complete absorption in what one does, and a resulting transformation in one's sense of time. Named by Milchai in 1975, the concept has been widely referred to flow state across a variety of fields and is particularly well recognized in occupational therapy, though the concept has been claimed to have existed for thousands of years under other names. The flow state shares many characteristics with hyperfocus. However, hyperfocus is not always described in a positive light. Some examples include spending too much time playing video games or becoming pleasurably absorbed in one aspect of an assignment or task to the detriment of the overall assignment. In some cases, hyperfocus can capture a person, perhaps causing them to appear unfocused or to start several projects but complete few. So yeah, completing few of them but starting many. Other related concepts include trance, hypnosis, hypnomania, mindfulness, as well as optimum flow state. And I was talking about that to get us into the idea of these currents and how we can plug into them and plug them into other people through our energy and our excitement, and how that has everything to do with charge. Geometry of light and other electromagnetic radiations. Light, similar to sound, is closely related to matter. For example, each frequency of sound has its own patterned water surface. In the same way, light has properties that give it geometric features, and most of them arise from the wave-particle duality. A concept, a quote-unquote wave-particle duality, a concept that states that every elementary particle can be described in terms of not only particles, but also waves. In sense, waves are closely related to frequency, the number of waves in a given time, which is the number of waves in a given time. We can assume that light can generate geometric and patterned shapes depending on the material or surface it encounters. And as they rotate through the filaments themselves become geometric and magnify the geometric patterns within it. And that's why we see so many hyperbolic shapes during DMT experiences and tripping on other entheogens and ingesting God and experiencing those experiences. The light at atomic level. Take the examples given by the laser experiment conducted at the University of California, San Diego. When projected through a circular cavity, light will rearrange itself into a variety of standing wave patterns. When the wavelength of light is given by an integer number of oscillations, the patterns are more clear and simple. Never knew that before. That's cool. So it's like 3D somatic images of light moving through the circular cavities. Reflections of the sun. When light interacts with ice crystals suspended in the atmosphere, a phenomena similar to the rainbow occurs. The sundog is given by the reflection and refraction of light at altitudes higher than 5 kilometers. Ice crystals become a prism from which light bounces when the sun is at 22 degrees above the horizon, giving the circular dispersion lower than that at 20 degrees. For example, the optical dispersion is limited to a pillar effect that we usually see in other bright lights like the moon or the streets, or in the street lights. So you got the circumzenithal arc. I'm not even going to try to pronounce some of these. Singularities of geometry. All field theories suffer from singularities when particles are introduced. A gravitational singularity, a one-dimensional point which contains a huge mass in an infinitely small space, where density and gravity become infinite and space-time curves infinitely, and where the laws of physics as we know them cease to operate. Perhaps at this point, the hidden geometrical structure manifested by all these forces and the respective field lines has the potential of eliminating all these singularities. Light as a geometric foliation pattern. One of an infinite amount of different types of the Dougherty foliations, higher dimensional infolded slices of double layer laminate and azimuthal currents. And yes, they are all phase conjugate or golden scaling. Here are some more examples of foliations. A foliation is a manifold X decomposition of submanifolds. And I'm showing this because light and the geometry of helicon waves seem to do this as well, and so does electricity and currents. So this is all usable. These submanifolds are all called leaves, or the foliation, and one says that X is foliated by the leaves. In order to have a useful notion, leaves are required to behave sufficiently well locally. In particular, if all leaves have the same dimension, then one speaks of a regular foliation, which is the case discussed here. If the dimension of leaves is allowed to vary, one speaks instead of singular foliation. For smooth manifolds, smooth foliations are decompositions into immersed submanifolds that locally can be expressed as fibers of a submersion, the projection to the space of leaves. So just getting into more of the math of these leaves and then these individual foliations of information inside of the Birkeland currents, lightning, your body, thoughts, desire, magnitude of desire, electricity and healing, spinal cord treatment. Recently, advancements have been made in regrowing spinal cord materials, at least for patients whose spinal cord was not completely severed, and you guessed it, The treatment involves the use of electricity applied to the injured area, just as the theory was proposed earlier that when you apply electricity to it, it will self-organize and self-arrange itself to work again. And I'm living proof of this through electroshock therapy. I survived an amputee. I'm an amputee survivor. I didn't get amputated because I went through severe electroshock therapy for 6 months after I broke my arm. And we ended up, it works perfectly now. So I couldn't feel my arm at all. And then it went from tiny little motion of my pinky. And then I started to be able to move it fully after physical therapy. Electricity in Alzheimer's. Studies on Alzheimer patients have demonstrated that Alzheimer patients frequently show an absence or reduction of electrical conduction within their brains. Improving electrical flow to impede areas has decreased the symptoms of Alzheimer's, which is good. Electrical benefits helping the Alzheimer patients. Cloning and electricity. To clone the cell, the single-strand genetic material from a female sex cell is removed. The double-stranded genetic material from an animal to be cloned is removed from a regular cell, then placed into the prepared female sex. What happens if this is done? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The processes of life are started if and only if the cell is zapped with electricity. Why, you ask? No one knows. So more enigmatic types of relay here with electricity and how many things it affects, and where we see it in the strangest of places, like extremophiles here. Electrical energy naturally produced on the seafloor may have given rise to life on Earth 4 billion years ago. This is according to a NASA report, which suggests organisms thrived inside deep sea springs at a time when Earth's crust churned across the entire planet. And yeah, it's been proposed that the whole sheaths, the sheaths between the sheaths between continental sheaths as they submerge from each other are all lubricated by living bacteria and living electrical bacteria, and this electricity and these secretions of this electricity is what actually causes the mantles to slip. And yeah, so it's all living, and this is crazy. There's also living creatures on the ground, living electrical creatures on the ground. I don't know if I put that in the presentation here or not, but electromagnetism is geometric. The whole theory of electromagnetism is inherently geometric, as Maxwell was a geometer and drew it all himself, along with the formulas and equations. Here's just a few of the equations that he had, and that's to wrap up the presentation here. It seems that, in my perspective, consciousness, spirits, ghosts, if anything ethereal, even living things, electricity tends to move towards the outside edges of things. It seeks the edges, and living creatures, edges of electrical conductivity and awareness, have vast differences. Some are aware of something feet away. Some are aware of something miles away, like whales and their whale songs and calls. The interconnectedness of all of this is really interesting, and I think it all has to do with fractals, filaments, and frequencies. And electricity, is it alive? I would say it behaves very much like anything alive behaves. Interesting. Anyway, well, that's basically the presentation for today. Um, I wanted to thank you guys for being here. I'm going to go back on stop sharing and go back to my face. Looks like I'm here. Here you go. Hey, guys. All right. Anyway, thank you for being here. That concludes our presentation on electricity. Is it alive? What do you think? Put down in the comments if you think it's alive, if you think it's not. Thank you for being here on episode 50, season 5. Uh, the Geometric View is a Love is Watching production, Love is Watching product, and it's sponsored by Fractal Branding and Bubble Sculpting and many other different things, Acorn Pinecone. We just love your support. Thank you for being out there and supporting us and being all a part of the same collaboration and connection. All right. I want to say thank you again to everybody for being here. I got my crazy sculpture here that I want to show off maybe for a little bit. that I wanted to show off at the beginning. And it's another bubble sculpture. So I'll be getting more into all of that later on this year and as we move along the circuit. So thanks for being here, learning more about the circuit and what the circuit is. Have a good weekend, guys. I'll see you next week.
I would never fall, I would never be a better person. You can never see me, I can never be inside of that tree, I can never be inside that forest. You wanna see me, but I'm not seeing you. You wanna get where I am, then you cannot do. You can't get you. I don't wanna. For the most of the time, I tried to divide the clouds when I got off and you live in the world, you give a different stuff. I'm a better person, I'm giving a nerve, give a different curse. Perfect all around. You're costing me a off. You're perfect because it's just perfect. Nobody get it off. Legally off. Piece of the pie. If you want a piece of that, you can have a piece of the pie. I'll give you that. I'll give you that much. If you want a piece of this, I'll give you a piece of me. But legally I'm off of your soul. If you can pick up one piece like me. The perfect compound job. A piece of this, I'll give you a piece of me. Legally I'm off of it. By the grain of stars. Sometimes it's like some moves you have on every dance floor too. Real smooth, it's like the moves you have on the dance floor. Real smooth. If you want to think you're real smooth on the dance floor, it's real smooth. I like some moves on the dance floor. Christ be in you, Christ be in all, Christ be in God, all of us be in us as God is in one in all, as one flesh is one flesh. You're real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. You're real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. Real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. Real smooth out on the dance floor, dance floor.
The Geometric View is a Love is Watching product. Love is Watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen.
of life I'm there. The grimiest and the grittiest of life I'm there. The grimiest and the grittiest of life I'm there.
Life and death. All of us. We have hope. Live your life for the cause. Love life. Live it to the fullest. Life is eternal, hope and thirsty. 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 Life is eternal, hope and thirsty.
Eyes all over the wall, eyes all over your body. Can I just see straight through with transparent golden scaling? The largest of the edifice embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
my hands the wrong passage. Shall you chop it off into your
Shout out for the glories of God. Shout out. Shout out for the glories of God. Shout out. Shout out for the glories of God. Shout out. Shout out for the glories of God. Shout out. Shout out for the glories of God. Shout out. Shout out for the glories of God. Shout out. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism. Need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, arrow in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the fact, tertiary Christian neuron synapses, and arrow endurance into eternity. I'm a courier of charismatic attitude, modern meters even neater, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, until in your ribbon, you pivot, potential, you curve a cat. Could be cold, could be copycat, could be comedy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best, could be Michael Racker, Mackie Normo, open-minded, itsy bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all?
Collaborative consumption.
Are you aware of this all?
Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption.
Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did this up? We don't got about a girl, but about a cause not about a goddess spirit. Get up, what's up? Get out, chop drums. We're playing on the head on what's up. I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in nerd rock, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing.